do it.
But we didn't do it.
We didn't do it because we're special. Sometimes the best advice comes from people who made a mistake. Hello, world.
Welcome to our world.
So today we are going to get into details as for the process that we use for me to visit my lovely wife over in the Philippines. It took longer than we had hoped, but it still happened. So hopefully this information will be helpful. There are some of these things, we are not lawyers.
Yeah, it's just what we're gonna be talking here is based on our experience.
Please contact a lawyer if you have questions. So US-based PCG.
We follow the news from Bureau of Immigration. We also called US Embassy in Manila.
Record your proposal and acceptance on video. So we did a lot of discussion, a lot of investigating about what marriage meant to each other, about what our past meant to each other, about what we learned in other relationships. We did that first. We found the wedding stuff online, and we reached out to webwed. I called them to find out as much as I could, talked to them about all the legal stuff that was possible. But I talked with them about it to see what all would be needed. And first I had a conversation with someone just to arrange the time and the date.
It is a woman that I think we had a video call with her.
We did, but first
I
just had a call with the staff just to talk with them and find out more about it. Then when we actually set up the date, then we had the meeting, the woman who's like the main officiant or at least the spokesperson for it. We had a conference with her.
Yeah, I think she was the one who does the registration of the marriage, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's in Utah, and it was part of the webwed, right?
Yeah, webwed is not a proxy marriage. It is not just simply a ceremonial marriage. It is a literal, like you are married in the U.S. by U.S. laws to a U.S. citizen and someone who is abroad. And it doesn't matter if the other country does not recognize the online marriage in their own country. Meaning the Philippines doesn't allow online marriages.
We don't.
But it doesn't matter because it's not a marriage legitimized in the Philippines. It's a marriage legitimized in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the Philippines will recognize that. There are a few concerns about getting married online that we didn't have to worry about because we trusted each other and we understood, but we probably should have done it in a slightly different order.
Yeah, we should have got the Cinemar first before we got married, just to know if I was married or you were married. So that's the purpose of Cinemar. Cinemar is a certificate of no marriage.
And it can't be registered. If you find yourself ready to marry someone in the Philippines, they don't tell you that they were married. You could get married in the U.S.
Yes. Yes, you can get married in the U.S., but your marriage is not legitimate here in the Philippines.
And it won't affect you as much as it will the Filipina in that particular situation, because they'll be more in trouble. But it'll also affect you because you can't go visit them based on a spousal relationship, and now you have to go through all that other stuff to get that undone, and there's no divorce in the Philippines. Another thing that we didn't have to do because we trusted each other, but this is just a warning for those people who are going down this path. There's two big things that don't happen on either side. If you can get married in the US and there won't be a background check. And so if you're a woman and you're trying to get married to a US citizen and they don't tell you that they have a criminal history, especially criminal histories involving sex trafficking, prostitution, drug trafficking, violence, domestic abuse, they don't have to tell you that. And you could be married in the US to someone with that history. If a Filipina is married to a man like that, they can't come over because the US will prevent that relationship because of his criminal past.
Yeah.
Conversely, that means that there's also not a background check on the Philippine person. they might have a history of violence or sex trafficking or sex work or other drug trafficking or whatever. And again, they will be married in the US, but now they can't come over because they can't leave the country.
Yeah.
And so you're married to someone who you'll never be able to see because you didn't have the proper background check and didn't verify.
Yeah. If you want a woman that has no records, you can ask her a National Bureau of Investigation clearance.
And I know that it sounds really dry and clunky, but you can have them, if you need to, you can have them watch this video. And we say, go ahead and do the background check. And then they can use that as an excuse. Like, yeah, they said it, so we're just doing it. Just sounds like a logical, yeah, do it.
But we didn't do it. We didn't do it
because we're special. Sometimes the best advice comes from people who made a mistake. And one of the mistakes that we made was the cinema first. It didn't come back to haunt us because we know. And another mistake was the background investigation that we should have done. It worked out for us. So those are our suggestions. Well, we don't sign the marriage certificate from there. The officiant signed it. There's no place for our signature. It's not even a blank for us to sign. The application has a blank for us to sign. Now, the signatures are not handwritten. The signatures are electronic. We signed it via email by saying we agreed to it. And electronic signatures in the US are legitimate signatures.
After doing all the investigations and then both parties are free to do it, then you can contact webwed for scheduling the ceremony and settling the cost. How much is the cost? The total cost?
So the ceremony itself was $800. $200 for the prenup. I do suggest you get a prenup.
Yeah, but it's up to them.
It's up to them.
$200 for extra copy of license, marriage certificate, and then $400 for the apostille.
We were getting mixed signals about the apostille. webwed was really suggesting that we get it. I talked to some lawyers about it, and one of them said that we might need it. Another one said we didn't. So we went on the cautious side and got the apostille for $400. Didn't need it.
Because there's a reason why we didn't need the apostille anymore. Because after we got married, we reported our marriage to San Francisco Consulate.
So throughout this whole process, I was in touch with my regional PCG. And first of all, just make sure that it was going to be legal, make sure that it was going to be recognized. And then when I was going through the process, so we got married. And when we got married, we immediately applied for the report of marriage so that the Philippines would recognize it and PCG would recognize it. Yeah. And they said that needed to be handled by the San Francisco PCG, which I sent out to them.
The documents are the 5 copies of filled out notarized forms. Make sure you filled out correctly. So you don't spend more money to send it back and forth,
Yeah, we had
and then, and then the marriage certificate, and then my birth certificate from Philippine Statistics Office, the original one, and a photocopy of my Philippine passport, and also the Sinumar. I used DHL to send documents. It's reliable, and it only takes 3 to 5 business days.
It actually only took 2 to 3 business days sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it's quicker, right?
Yeah, I had to get it notarized again when it came over here. And then I sent it on to San Fran. And I got those back. It took us about 3 to 4 weeks before we got it back, and the PCG recognized that we were married. So that's the PCG that recognized we were married. But the Philippine government?
Approximately 6 months, you can request authenticated report of marriage from the Philippine Statistics Office. And exactly 6 months. We got our authentication from the Philippine Statistics Authority. Our marriage is registered in the Philippines.
We are official internationally.
Yes. So, my God, this is it.
So,
we can't escape.
So, so waiting for 6 months for the Philippines to recognize it does not mean I couldn't travel over there. It just meant that I had to use the report of marriage that I got from PCG over here in order to validate me coming over there.
Let's talk about the visa.
So the moment that I got the report of marriage, I immediately turned around and applied for a visa. And because of the rules kept changing and restrictions regarding entry and leaving and all the rest of that stuff, it was not really clear what was going on. And so again, I contacted the PCG. And you follow the Bureau of Immigration's website to also give us insight as to what's going on.
Yeah.
Now, I contacted the PCG, talked with them about how to handle this. There was a moment when it looked like I could go because it allowed spousal visits without accompaniment. I filled out the application. I was about to send it on its way, and they said that the rules are probably about to change. And I asked them if they could just keep my visa in case the rules change again in my favor. And they were able to do so. Now, that was our experience. They might not be able to do that. They might not have done that. They might have done that as a favor. I don't really know. But they did keep my visa application on the books.
Yes, that was April.
The opportunity to go over there didn't come again for months and months because the rules kept changing and none of them allowed for a spousal visit without accompaniment.
Yeah.
Then in June, we got the notice that the EED option.
We sent a letter request from the DFA for the exemption.
We sent that at the end of June, and they said it could take up to a month to get that answer. And towards the tail end of July, we still hadn't heard anything, but DI had announced that the rules had changed.
You don't need an exemption anymore. As long as you have a family here in the Philippines, you can travel on your own.
Now that was lifted for that one moment in which I was able to contact the PCG and ask them to approve it, and they did. They had the paperwork there, they could easily do it, and they let me know in the next few days that they did approve it, and they sent it back out so that we could make the trip. The rules may have changed after that.
You apply for a 9A visa. I sent a letter to you with notarized, a letter of support from me stating that you will not be a problem in the Philippines.
I had to send in my real passport, my real state ID, some other identifiers like birth certificate. They have that all on the site. The report of marriage. I also had to send in proof of financial independence. And I fill out the applications, and also I had to get an airplane ticket.
Yeah, and also hotel reservations.
I was able to keep in touch with the PCG and keep them updated when I here's a new date for the flight, here's a new date for the hotel reservations.
Yeah.
And then they sent me the approved visa. They put the stamp on my passport. It showed up at my house a few days later. I was able to get onto a plane within the time allotted for the visa. Because due to some other complications after they approved it, there was a quota restriction, meaning the airline that had booked me to fly into the Philippines had too many people going to it, and so they just straight up canceled the flight.
Yeah.
And so you can do all these other things and more stuff just gets in the way. Just stay focused, be patient. It can happen.
Yes.
And I was able to book it for a few weeks later.
And make sure when you travel, bring all the documents with you.
The documents
just in case.
The documents that I needed were the report of marriage, my COVID test, because I needed to take a COVID test 3 days before. There was the thing I needed to sign up for tracking or something.
Yeah, that's from the Mactan International Airport website.
Mm-hmm.
That's
needed
5 days, within 5 days prior to your arrival.
proof of the hotels I was going to stay in, like
Yes.
I had the reservation.
The accredited hotel quarantine. Is that it?
When I got to the airport to fly out, I had these documents checked almost at every port, even though it was the same airline twice. So I would get on. So I would show up and they'd say, "What's my final destination?" I would show them my passport, my PCR test, and every now and then they would ask for some proof of marriage. But that didn't really happen until I finally landed in the Philippines. So if you really want to make sure you have the documents, because it's possible for you to go all the way to the Philippines, land there, and then they're like, "You don't have the documents, you got to turn around."
Yes. And the most important documents is the report of marriage, because that's what you showed it to
that is.
Bureau of Immigration in the airport.
I was really trying to think what other things might have slowed me down. Your passport, but report of marriage, yeah. Don't be shy about telling them that you got married online.
Yeah.
I from the
get-go, be honest.
From the moment that I talked to the immigration lawyers, to the PCG, to even when I talked to the Manila U.S. Embassy, I made sure that it was clear that we were married online.
Yeah. You really have to be, you really have to tell them that you got married online, because they will find out.
Yeah. From the moment we got married to the moment we finally took the trip, it took 6 months. A bunch of those months were spent waiting for restrictions to lift. The actual amount of time that we put in the effort, like if things were smoother, I could have been there a month afterwards.
Yeah.
But that's the way it was. We made it happen.
Yep.